Disney fans are eagerly anticipating the release of the live-action adaptation of The Little Mermaid set to hit theaters in 2023, either to enjoy it or criticize it depending on their personal stance of live-action remakes. And although everyone has seen the 1989 Disney original, many people aren't familiar with the original fairy tale and just how messed up it is. In fact, a lot of the fairy tales that Disney animation movies are based on are actually incredibly dark, morbid, or all around messed up. So let's take a look at some of them today. I'm Caleb with Wicked Binge, and these are the dark origins of Disney princesses. Let's start with the princess who everyone is talking about, Ariel from The Little Mermaid. But before we go way back to the original fairy tale, let's take a look at the original Disney animation. It's actually a bit darker than many of us remember. One of the most striking elements of the film is its emphasis on sacrifice. Ariel, the protagonist, is willing to give up her voice and make a deal with Ursula, the sea witch, in order to become human and pursue her dream of being with Prince Eric. This willingness to sacrifice is a common theme in fairy tales and reflects the idea that true love requires sacrifice and risk. Another dark element of the film is the betrayal that Ariel experiences. When Ursula transforms into Vanessa and uses Ariel's voice to enchant Eric, Ariel is heartbroken and betrayed by both Eric and Ursula. This betrayal highlights the theme of deception, which is a common theme in many Disney films. And let's also not gloss over the fact that Ursula gets killed in a particularly brutal manner, getting impaled and electrocuted. Not saying she didn't deserve it, but it is pretty dark. That said, when it comes to really messed up stories, the Disney version can't hold a trident to the original fairy tale. The original story of The Little Mermaid was written by Danish author Hans Christian Andersen and was first published in 1937. That was a long time ago, and like many fairy tales of this era, things got pretty screwed up. The story tells the tale of a young mermaid who falls in love with a human prince and makes a deal with a sea witch to trade her voice for legs so that she can live on land and try to win the prince's love.
Oh my gosh.
However, the sea witch makes this transformation come at a terrible cost. Every step she takes on her new legs will feel like she is walking on sharp knives, and she will have no voice to express her pain. This punishment is inflicted upon her by the sea witch as a way to extract revenge against the mermaid's father. Even worse, the prince falls in love with another woman, and the mermaid is faced with a choice, which is far more morbid than the one we remember Ariel facing. That choice is between killing the prince to regain her tail and returning to the sea, or dying and becoming sea foam. Again, the story faces an emphasis on sacrifice. The mermaid is willing to give up everything, including her voice and her life, in order to be with the prince she loves. This willingness to sacrifice is a common theme in Andersen's stories, and it reflects his own struggles with love and loss in his personal life. But perhaps the darker element of the story is the betrayal that the mermaid ultimately experiences. After giving up her voice to the sea witch in exchange for legs, the mermaid is unable to speak and communicate with the prince she loves, even after saving his life. When the prince falls in love with another woman, the mermaid is heartbroken and betrayed by the prince's actions. This betrayal highlights the theme of unrequited love, which is a common theme in many of Andersen's fairy tales. Finally, the tragic ending of this story is perhaps the darkest aspect of The Little Mermaid. After the prince marries another woman, the mermaid is faced with the choice we mentioned a moment ago: killing him and returning to her life in the sea, or dying and becoming sea foam. She chooses the latter, and the story ends with her transformation into sea foam and her acceptance of her fate. Ouch. Alright, next, let's talk about Cinderella. First of all, let's talk about violence. In the original story, Cinderella's stepsisters are so desperate to fit into the glass slipper that they chop off parts of their own feet. And this isn't depicted as shocking or disturbing, it's just seen as a consequence of their greed and ambition. Yikes.
It's like a dream.
And let's not forget about the fairy godmother. In the original story, she's not the benevolent figure we've come to know and love. Instead, she's kind of indifferent to Cinderella's plight, and only helps her after being begged repeatedly. Plus, she warns Cinderella not to stay out too late at the ball, which implies that there may be consequences if she disobeys. Not exactly warm and fuzzy. Moving on, Mulan is actually another Disney movie that has some darker elements, even as a kids film. For instance, when you factor in the avalanche, Mulan has the highest kill count by far when compared to other Disney heroes. There's also the really tragic elements depicting war, where we see the loss of civilian life, including children. A dark element of both the Disney movie and the original story is the idea of sacrifice and duty. Mulan's decision to take her father's place in the army is motivated by a deep sense of duty and honor, and she is willing to risk her life for her country and her family. However, this also means that she must give up her own dreams and aspirations and live a life that is defined by duty and responsibility, rather than personal fulfillment.
Ha! I see you have a sword.
The big change from the original story is the ending. The original ending of the Mulan story is quite different from the happy ending we see in the Disney movie. In the original legend, Mulan returns home from the war to find that her father has died and her mother has remarried. She is honored by the emperor for her service, but refuses any rewards and instead asks for a horse to take her home. On the way back, Mulan is confronted by her fellow soldiers who have come to visit her. They are surprised to learn that she is a woman, and feel betrayed that she has disguised herself and fought alongside them. In some versions of the story, Mulan is so ashamed that she kills herself on the spot. In other tellings, she is exiled by the emperor and forced to live in obscurity. In some other versions, she becomes so distraught that she takes her own life either by hanging or self-immolation. While the details of Mulan's death are not always clear or consistent in different versions of the story, her tragic end serves as a reminder of the sacrifices that she made in order to serve her country and protect her family's honor. It also highlights the cultural expectations placed on the women at the time, who are expected to be dutiful daughters and wives above all else. Moving on, let's take a look at Rapunzel from Tangle. One of the most disturbing and adult themes in the Brothers Grimm version of Rapunzel is the suggestion that Rapunzel becomes pregnant after her encounters with the prince. The witch discovers this and banishes Rapunzel to a remote desert where she gives birth to twins. This element of the story adds a whole new level of complexity and darkness to the already troubling tale.
Oh my gosh, this would kill her.
And forces us to confront the real-world consequences of Rapunzel's intimate relationship with the prince. Also, after being discovered by the witch, the prince is blinded by her and forced to wander the wilderness alone. This punishment is much harsher than in any other version of the story and adds a tragic dimension to the prince's character. But real quick, before we get to our next entries, if you're enjoying this video, do us a huge favor and hit that subscribe button and notification bell. We ask because we'd really appreciate the help getting to our next milestone, and we have lots more videos we'd love to share with you. Thanks so much. Finally, let's talk about Tiana in The Princess and the Frog. Many aren't as familiar with the Frog Prince fairy tale, which acted as the framework for the Disney retelling. We weren't surprised to learn that this classic story, which has been retold countless times, has some pretty dark and unsettling elements that often get overlooked. One of the first things that struck us about this story is the princess's initial disgust towards the frog. In the original version, she actually throws him against the wall in disgust. Now, it may not seem like the most violent thing to happen in a fairy tale, but it really reinforces the princess's lack of empathy.
Very funny.
Then, of course, there's the frog's transformation and demand for marriage. After the frog turns into a prince, he demands the princess marry him as a reward for her promise to him. But it's not based on love or mutual affection, it's just the sense of entitlement and obligation. We were left wondering about the ethics of marriage as a transactional exchange and the role of power dynamics in romantic relationships. And finally, in some versions of the story, a false bride tries to claim the prince as her own and is punished by being dragged through the streets in a barrel filled with spikes. This punishment is often described in gruesome detail, with the false bride screaming and bleeding as the barrel is rolled through the town. The spikes in the barrel are said to be sharp and pointed, causing the bride immense pain and suffering. This punishment serves as a warning to anyone who would dare to deceive or betray the prince or the kingdom. It's also worth noting that this type of punishment was not uncommon in medieval times, when the original Frog Prince story is thought to have originated. Public punishments were often used to deter crime and maintain order, and the use of spikes or other sharp objects was intended to cause maximum pain and suffering. However, from a modern perspective, this punishment is extremely brutal and raises questions about the appropriateness of violent retribution. But let us know in the comments section which of these Disney princess origins you feel is the most messed up. Make sure you hit that notification bell and binge our other videos. But most importantly, stay wicked.